This week we're going to start a new series on Joseph, and I promise you that this is not about COVID-19. I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus, but I do think we're in a very unique time where it's really important for us to learn about living with integrity through adversity. And this is a time where we can learn how to do that outside of this crazy, uncertain time. And we're going to be talking about Joseph because I think specifically Joseph's life is a really good example of how to live a life of integrity, because Joseph lived a life of integrity in spite of a bunch of adversity. When he was hated, he didn't retaliate. He didn't fight back. When he was tempted, he didn't fall into that temptation. When his whole life fell apart, he stayed strong, and he went through a lot. And I think we can learn a lot from his life, and that's what I want to be looking at throughout this series. And it's called Overcome. So this week we're talking about overcoming adversity. And I want to talk just about the adversity that he went through, because he went through a lot. And part of it was because he was one of the favorite sons of Jacob. And if you remember from the Jacob series, we talked about Jacob and his sons, and we talked about him when he was going out to Laban to find a wife. And if you remember, he really wanted to marry Rachel. So he went there, and Laban said, okay, if you work for me for 7 years, you can marry Rachel. And at the end of 7 years, he was tricked, and he was tricked into marrying Leah. So he had to work another 7 years because he really, really loved Rachel. So at the end of it, he was married to both Leah and Rachel, and they started having kids. And he had a bunch of kids with Leah, and eventually, finally, had Joseph with Rachel. And that was the first son that he had with Rachel, the wife that he really, really loved. And that's why he was kind of one of his favorites. And that did not bode well for Joseph throughout his life and his relationship with his brothers. They were kind of jealous of him because of that, and it caused a lot of tension. And on top of that, there was a whole time where Joseph was having dreams about his brothers bowing down to him, which did not help at all. He shared that with his family and with his brothers, because he's like, I don't really understand what this is. I don't understand where these are coming from, but these are the dreams I'm having. And his brothers really, really hated him for that. And there was a day when Jacob asked Joseph, he said, hey, go out to the field and check on your brothers. So he did. And his brothers hated him, and they wanted to kill him. And when he got out there, they were like, all right, guys, we want to kill Joseph. And luckily, Reuben was there, the oldest, and he kind of convinced them not to do that. He said, okay, why don't we just throw him into a pit and forget about it. Let's not kill him. Let's just throw him in this pit. So they did that. They agreed. And then a little while later, they all decided to sell him into slavery. Okay, and this is all Joseph was a teenager. That is a lot to go through as a teenager. And you maybe will never go through anything as crazy as that. There is also a possibility that maybe you will go through some stuff that feels just as crazy and just as terrible as that. And that's why I want to talk about how to overcome adversity, because there's really only one way of doing that. And that's what I want to talk about. And really, the reality is there are four things I want to point out to you. Now, 4 things I want to talk about in terms of what we can learn from Joseph here, and really how we can overcome adversity throughout our life. And the first of those things is, unfortunately, obviously, prosperity. When life is going well, prosperity is unfortunately temporary. It very, very well could be temporary. So it's important for us, when things are going well, to just take time to be thankful. Thank God for that. Thank God for when life is going really well. We have a tendency to only reach out to him when life is not going well. So my encouragement is that when life is going well, reach out to God in thanks. Be thankful for those times, because like I said, unfortunately, sometimes our prosperity can be temporary, and adversity is going to come. Second thing is, adversity is inevitable. Prosperity is temporary. Adversity is inevitable. Things are going to happen that we don't expect, that are hard, and we really need to confide in God in those times. And adversity is inevitable, so we need to be prepared. And how do we do that? I just want to read John 16:33. I think it explains this really well. It says this. It says, I have read these things to you, that in me you may have peace. This is Jesus talking. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. So how do we get prepared for adversity? We need to abide in God. We need to abide in our relationship with God and be praying and engaging in that relationship all the time. And that is going to take effort, which is the third thing here, which effort is essential. In our effort to be prepared for adversity, to overcome adversity, effort is so essential. We have to do everything we can to stay in relationship with God daily, to read our Bible daily, to pray daily, to engage in that relationship and build it and build a really strong relationship with Him, because it is so important in overcoming adversity. And not only when we see adversity coming, but even when we're in prosperity, even when life is going well, we need to engage in our relationship with Him always, daily. And that's so important. And that brings us to the fourth thing, is when we have a really great relationship with God, we can be encouraged because God is always faithful. God is always faithful. So when adversity comes, if we plan to have the ability to overcome it, we need to be in relationship with God, because God is faithful. And a pastor from Arizona, he preached a sermon about this, and he said it really well. He concluded this really well, and I just want to let him say it. So watch this.
God's help, Joseph was able to overcome every adversity that he faced. I want to tell you today, you can too with God's help. And you say, how? Okay, here's the takeaway. You got to learn to stay purpose-centered instead of self-centered.
He said it well. We need to stay purpose-centered instead of self-centered. Our purpose is to have a relationship with God, to glorify Him with our lives, and to engage in that every single day. So I encourage you to do that. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.